Here we are, the second to last episode of the season. To me, this was the make or break of the show. If the execution on this works, I love the show. If the execution on this doesn't, I love the fifth episode. Going into this episode, I can't fathom that the story group would make the Jedi the bad guys. The second episode was intentionally full of blanks and confusion to keep us wondering. That also makes me wonder if there will be a lot of rewatch value on this show, the season or the series, once it wraps. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get to the end first. We're back on Brendock, 16 years ago. The four Jedi are doing some field work to determine where life on this planet came from. Apparently, it was deemed lifeless because of a hyperspace disaster 100 or so years before. The Jedi explain they're looking for a Force Vergence, a collection of Force energy, is something that could create life. Right away, I was happy that the Jedi weren't on the planet hunting the witches. Torben, for a Padawan, is pretty openly vocal about his dislike for the assignment and his desire to return to Coruscant. This leads to a conversation between Indara and Sol about Indara having a Padawan and Sol not. It wasn't explicitly said, but I get the feeling he's been one, but the Council didn't deem him ready. Would have been a bit stronger if they discussed Sol maybe losing a Padawan, a female Padawan around Osha's age, and the Council thinking he hasn't gotten over it yet. This would have given a lot more reason why he felt so instantly connected to Osha from the second he saw her. It's like he saw her in the woods and was obsessed instantly, and I don't really know the reason why. As I thought, the hole in the ground up on the top of the fortress, where the witches are holding their ceremony, is a Force Vergence. Throughout the episode, we get some very well done scenes that are from the second episode, but from this new vantage point of the Jedi. We also get our first glimpse at the big misunderstanding that causes this entire disaster. To the Jedi, it looks like the kids are being kept, held against their will. At least the Jedi worrying about the girls makes sense. It goes even deeper when Sol's worried that May was marked with the Dark Mark, the dark side of the Force, and Osha didn't get one. Indara eventually joins him in his worry that both girls may be sacrificed after May sort of explains what the Ascension ceremony is, to the best of her abilities as a child. She says that Mother Anastasia tells him that everyone must be sacrificed to fulfill their destiny. It does seem pretty black and white. When Anastasia intrudes into Torben's mind and we go inside his head, that was awesome. It was appropriately creepy and a big reason why he takes the Barash vow after this and why he's so eager to get off planet. To extrapolate further, this is probably what it feels like to the other Jedi when Kymar's doing the very same thing to them. After running the girl's blood and realizing that there is a Vergence in the Force and they were created or at least manipulated, Torben is determined to get them to prove this Vergence, and that's his ticket back to Coruscant. Not just because he's upset with doing field work, but because he has to get away from this planet where his mind was intruded. When they're with the witches, Indara's words on not denying the Jedi the right to test seemed like a threat when we first saw it. This time around, it seems like she's using it more as a diffusing tactic, a tactic to put things off until she can contact the Council. Every time we got a story beat like this that filled in the blanks and made the Jedi feel more like Jedi and less like child predators, I was so relieved. Indara is also not thrilled with how Sol coached Osha before the test. You can see she's trying really hard to keep it together. She even says something along the lines of, "Don't confuse what she is with what you want." I like learning that Osha was too old to join the Order. This plays into the Jedi Order lore that we already know, and also helps explain why Osha likely left the Order. She even tells Jecki that she couldn't get over things in the way that the Jedi think she should. I'm really liking Indara as a character. Last week I said I only liked the bad guy, now I'm on board with Indara. She was attempting to not escalate the situation the whole time. Sol was worried for the girls, and we get reasons as to why, but he goes in way too far, way too emotional, and obviously makes a mess of things. This is not a complaint of the character choices or saying it's bad writing. That's the whole point. This ties into the conversation Sol and May had last week, when he still thought that she was Osha, about seeing what you want rather than what's actually right in front of you. Indara telling Sol he's being emotional makes him more emotional, and then says he doesn't get to decide what's best for the girls. They say the girls were likely split using the Vergence in the Force. This makes me think maybe there was a more traditional pregnancy, and then Anastasia used the Force to make twins rather than a single child. For every rash decision Sol makes, it seems like Coral is making a parallel move. She fires up May. She's escalating things. She has May desperate and angry. Coral's actions are more justifiable than Sol's as an outside religion, literally trying to take her children. Coral is the one who carried the children, and she has a different attachment to them than Anastasia. The explanation on the fire isn't quite what I thought it would be. May literally did start the fire, and it did lead to her killing, or at least appearing to have killed her family. But it wasn't solely because because of her actions. One big question that was eating at me since the second episode is how the fire spread so quickly in a stone cave. It goes into the electrical wiring, which is why it leads straight back to the generator and causes the explosion. Anastasia demonstrates a new ability. She starts turning into some kind of smoke. May does as well. Sol takes it as an aggressive move toward the kids and kills Anastasia right in front of May. It's strange May was ready to give up her revenge mission a few episodes ago because her sister was alive, and she didn't seem all that angry that the Jedi stabbed her mother through the chest right in front of her. I'm not sure of the larger significance, but Coral was completely outmatched when trying to take on Sol. I'm wondering if this ties in with Kymar somehow. At least I wanted to. Unless I totally missed it, we still don't see Coral's body. I was waiting to see Kelnaka in action. To take over his mind, we see the power of many. Luckily, we didn't have to suffer through that silly chant again. The witches mind meld with Coral to control him. Sol and Torben take Kelnaka on head on, and it's Indara who is the one to subdue him and then overpower the mind control. I had a theory way back in the second episode that the witches would do some kind of mind meld. I thought they would do it with Anastasia, and when she was killed, all their minds would be lost. That's not quite how it went down, but it certainly explains the pile of bodies. As the Jedi leave the planet, Torben shows some humility, but Indara isn't having it. She's mad at Torben and Sol for defying her wishes of not getting involved. Look at the mess they made. A lot of people died, and that includes, as far as they know, the life of a child. When Sol says that he'll confess to the council, it's actually Indara who argues against that. She says that would be more loss for Osha after everything they did. Sol would never be allowed to be her master after everything. While it makes sense, it seems like the lines kind of swapped characters. Shouldn't Indara have been the one to tell Sol to confess to the council, and Sol would argue back that Osha would lose even more and he had to take her under his wing to make up for it? Ultimately, it gets us to the same place. It just feels more consistent for their personalities. Some minor personal preference issues aside, I thought the writers nailed the explanation. As I said at the top, everything hinged on this episode for me. If the Jedi were actually as terrible as they seemed when we first saw the second episode, or if the explanation fell flat or was full of holes, the whole show wouldn't work. The explanation answers the bulk of our questions and makes sense. It's understandable, and the misunderstandings along the way, along with Torben's line thinking they were doing the right thing, all come together. I was wondering how Torben even made it to Jedi Master as such a colossal screw-up as a Padawan. All the blame doesn't fall on him, of course, but after Anastasia entering his mind, I'd feel he run away from the temple. But if they had to cover everything up, there couldn't be repercussions about Torben's behavior, because then they would have to admit what the behavior was and what it led to. I was hoping to see how this all tied in with Kymar, and maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's as simple as Kymar finds a naturally gifted person in the Force who needs purpose and is seeking revenge. If I had one main complaint about this series, it's that they could have used more time to develop certain things without adding a lot to the budget or slowing the show down. We have one episode left, and I don't have high hopes for it being anything over 40 or 45 minutes. I keep asking myself how everything will be tied up. The simplest answer, which according to Occam's razor tells us that it's the correct one, is that everything won't be tied up. We won't get exposition dumps explaining every little detail about every little thing, and that's okay. Actually, it's a good thing. First off, exposition dumps are lazy. Show, don't tell. Secondly, leaving questions open leaves room for a second season. Books, comics. Star Wars is forever filling in the blanks. After this week's explanations, I'm fully interested in a second season. I hope if they do go that way, it gets a little bit more tightening up, a little bit more on the runtime of the limited amount of episodes, but overall, I'm in. Check out this video next for more Star Wars lore on the wider Star Wars galaxy.